expatriates in the Gulf states. So Delhi does support these efforts?
Support in the sense that we're looking at it not with any negativity, because there is no strategic benefit in rooting for the failure of the peace process, but in the sense of an interested neighbor. I mean, I don't think support is quite the right word. We are certainly not an obstacle or an obstruction. It's instant, and nor are we actually in any way poo-pooing the Pakistani efforts. We are watching with interest, and if they succeed, we will certainly want to applaud.
But I'm surprised that India, given that it has good relations with all parties in this conflict in the Middle East, whether it's the United States, whether it's Israel, Gulf states, Iran, why didn't New Delhi position itself as a mediator?
That's a very fair question, because it's something which I believe India has worked hard at maintaining channels of communication with all the players. But in this particular instance, I think Pakistan had a little more directly at stake than perhaps India did. And for us, celebrating a neighbor's successful mediation, it doesn't diminish our standing or our viability. It's a recognition that a win for stability is a win for everyone. If tomorrow Pakistan fails, if for whatever reason this particular initiative collapses, I have been strongly advocating that India should be a strong voice for peace. In a new formula, whatever the Pakistanis try, if it doesn't work, we have to help identify another formula, precisely taking advantage of our good relationships with all the players concerned.
The U.S. President Donald Trump shared a post which said that China and India were hellholes. Do you have any comments on that?
I think Mr. Trump is sometimes indiscriminate in what he shares. He didn't say this himself. It's a post by some character called Mark Savage in some show called The Savage Nation, and he certainly was savage in his show.
Brother, let's go pick up the sister. Open to the sister, literally.
Go on to the ship. Sure.
In my mind, only a building was going to be destroyed, and I prayed, and just we're going to blow up a government building and
from fossil fuel companies.
The idea is gaining traction. Starting from May 2026, Amsterdam is set to become the first capital in the world to enforce a legal ban. The city also breaking ground by including meat. Council member Jenneke van Pijpen led the proposal, which won by a narrow margin.
We have to do everything we can, and this is one a major step to do so, and we hope that a lot of cities follow our example.
The ban applies to the following list of products: air travel, gas contracts, electricity produced with fossil sources, cruise ships, petrol cars, and meat. In the meantime, fossil fuel ads are still visible across the city, even though they're not always easy to spot.
This is fuel advertising. It's quite sneaky, but it's inviting you to travel the world.
Plane in sight, just a destination: the upcoming World Cup in the U.S.
If you look at it closely, you see that it actually redirects you to a website that only sells low-budget air travel tickets, and this type of advertising is going to be forbidden in a few months because it's a fossil fuel product to fly across the world.
A few steps away, another example: a major travel and cruise ship company.
Actually, right now, everywhere in the country on the public transport is trying to sell summer to people and trying to lure them into buying and consuming fossil fuels.
The NGO began denouncing the industry's persuasion tactics in 2019, convinced Amsterdam to stop issuing new contracts for fossil fuel ads, eventually paving the way for the newly approved ban.
Changer because doing it in a local law means that you can do it in just a few months, whereas if you would phase out fossil fuel advertisements through They typically run for 15 years, so it would take too long to do it, even past 2030, even past
behaviors. It can also hinder climate action.
The advertisements tell us that flying is okay and that flying is maybe something that we should desire. It tells us that, okay, we life or a high status life. It sets the non-sustainable choice as the standard. This is the normal thing to do. And if you see the government, the moment they allow all these kinds of advertisements, they all tell us, okay, apparently the people around us do not care, politics do not care, industry do not care, why should I care?
Those in favor of a nationwide ban say fossil fuels should be as the new tobacco, pointing to a drop in consumption as advertising rules became tougher. Eliminating climate-harmful ads can also encourage companies to develop and promote more sustainable alternatives.
Radicalization of individuals going online and being immersed in radical ideology themselves, when in fact it was known that it was not a case of self-radicalization, but a case of RCMP radicalization.
On the one hand, the justice system worked, we were set free. On the other hand, we spent over 3 years in jail. We were set up by the Canadian security apparatus, and it could happen to anyone. It could happen to someone else. It could be happening to someone right now.
Projet Souvenir était loin d'être un dérapage isolé. Il y a une longue lignée de cas de provocation policière qui remonte jusqu'au début de la Confédération canadienne et malheureusement, le public, les citoyens sont très loin de se douter jusqu'à où les autorités canadiennes sont prêtes à aller au nom de notre propre sécurité.
So our job, which is a very heavy burden, is to continue to advocate and research and show the evidence and keep pushing anywhere we can. So whether it's in protests, whether it's speaking out in the media about what's happening, whether it's like educating people, whether it's on social media, at the United Nations, at the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights, whatever form it takes, we have to keep pushing until they finally, there's just too much evidence and too much damage that they say, listen, we've done this.
Officials say the suspect in Saturday's attack apparently aimed to kill Trump and senior officials at the White House Correspondents Dinner in a Washington hotel. It would be the third attempt on the president's life in less than 2 years. Trump telling American television that he was not worried during the incident when he and other senior members of his administration were whisked away by secret agents. Fraser Jackson.
Became involved in left-wing activism in Los Angeles, where he also acquired firearms and began regularly practicing at a firing range. And that took to action, however, as it's believed the shooter then boarded a train in LA and traveled to Chicago and then on to DC, where he checked into the hotel in DC where the dinner was taking place last night. His manifesto that authorities are currently combing through said that he was targeting administration officials from the highest to to the lowest ranking. But interestingly, though, it did not include Kash Patel, who of course is the director of the FBI, and incidentally was sat directly behind me at the...
President Trump has come under threat by an attacker, raising fresh concerns about security and the growing pattern of political violence across the country. Charlotte Lamb reports.
The morning after a man tried to storm the White House Correspondents Dinner, the scene outside the hotel is relatively calm. Media remains in place, passers-by stop to take photos, and security is still highly visible. But there's a lingering sense of unease.
This is kind of crazy that we've had so many political violence in this country.
This keeps happening. There's unfortunately one of these times, unfortunately, something very, very bad is going to happen if we continue to have these types of attacks on political leaders.
Experts say there has been an increase in political violence in the U.S. over recent years, with many pointing to an increasingly polarized country where political rhetoric has become more divisive and violent in nature, and at times fueled by disinformation. A notable rise has been seen in the years since the 2020 election, including the insurrection of Capitol Hill on January 6th of following year. Since then, a series of high-profile attacks has followed, the killings of Minnesota lawmakers Melissa Hortman and John Hoffman, the attempted murder of Paul Pelosi, husband of former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, multiple attempted assassinations of Donald Trump during his 2024 campaign, and the killing of political activist Charlie Kirk.
Are you concerned about political violence?
Moments after Saturday night's incident, President Trump stood before reporters and acknowledged the risks of his role while calling for unity.
Nobody told me this was such a dangerous profession. If Marco would have told me, maybe I wouldn't have run. Maybe I would have said, I'll take a pass.
The California teacher and engineer accused of attempting to storm Saturday's gala believed it was his duty to target Trump administration officials, according to a note he sent family members minutes before the attack. Cole Thomas Allen is due to appear in court Monday.
As well as the Russian President Vladimir Putin regarding regional issues as well as bilateral relations. Abbas Arachi arrived here on a plane called Minab 168 in honor of the children that were killed in a U.S.-Israeli strike on a school on the very first day of Trump's war on Iran. And his visit comes after he visited Pakistan and Oman, also for some high-level meetings with officials there as well. And in terms of the Oman foreign minister, he said that he's on the same page with Abbas Arachi when it comes to the he says that both Oman and Iran have the right to defend it.
Good discussion on the Strait of Hormuz with Iran's foreign minister, Dr. Araghchi. As littoral states, we recognize our shared responsibility to the international community and the urgent humanitarian need to free the seafarers held for far too long. Much diplomacy is required and practical solutions to ensure lasting freedom of navigation.
Now, when it comes to Pakistan, it's also important to understand that Islamabad plays a key mediating role between Tehran and Washington, so much so that there were media reports going around that a direct meeting between the Iranian officials and U.S. officials was set to take place last Saturday. The White House itself said that it was ready to send Steve Witkoff, Jared Kushner, but according to the Iranian Foreign Ministry, the Iranians were not interested in direct negotiations with the United States. This is something that made Donald Trump quite upset, actually.
We canceled the trip. We have all the guards. We're not going to spend 15 hours in airplanes all the time going back and forth to be giving a document that was not good enough. And so we'll deal by telephone, and they can call us anytime they want. Again, we have all the guards. They have no military left, practically. They have no leaders left. We don't know who the leaders are. Nobody knows who the leader. I don't think they know who the leaders are, very importantly. So
Now, Iran has understandably been very suspicious of direct negotiations with the United States. We have to remember that Iran was attacked by Americans in Geneva in February.
President Vladimir Putin. And Iran are long-standing partners, with Moscow being a critical diplomatic ally for Tehran throughout the war with the US. At one point, even in peace talks, the Kremlin offered to take custody of Iran's enriched uranium, which Donald Trump reportedly rejected.
It is a suitable opportunity for still consultations with our Russian friends regarding the developments that have taken place in relation to the war during these periods, and to review the current situation together. The excessive demands they made and the incorrect approaches they adopted, it was necessary for us to have consultations with our friends in Pakistan to examine the situation.
To Africa now, Mali has announced 2 days of national country in recent years. There's an international response to violence and terrorism in the West African Sahel region after Saturday's large-scale assaults. Joining me now in the studio is Doug Herbert, our international
seeing what's being described by regional observers as one of the biggest coordinated attacks that this country that has been really in rebellion and coups and threats from jihadist groups over the years. It's seen no shortage of of violent activities, but right now these attacks are being described as unprecedented. And I use the word coordinated, which raises the question, well, coordinated by whom? There are two, you might say, a ragtag and unlikely alliance.
But the Americans are not obligated to fulfill even these 10 conditions, despite their agreement in principle. I think that if a new round of negotiations takes place, the Americans will recognize our demands to identify the side that attacked us, pay compensation for the damage caused to Iran as a result of the aggression, and other issues.
in an
Cargo consisted of raw materials for consumables used in dialysis filters, destined for the Soha Hilal Company, which is affiliated with the Red Crescent Society of the Islamic Republic of Iran. Under established international law and customary rules, this action is unacceptable and violates international humanitarian law as well as the law of the sea. According to the convention governing the seas, the crew of commercial ships must be protected, something that unfortunately was not observed in this case. Additionally, the attack involved about 8 containers of raw materials used to produce dialysis filters. This obviously puts patients' lives at risk, because without those raw materials, human lives are endangered.
CENTCOM published
major cities, leaving really the future of this junta based in the capital Bamako very much precarious, very fragile at this moment.
And we've seen French forces pull out of Mali a few years back, which of course was seen as a strategic defeat for the French. Now the Russians are withdrawing, and I imagine this has been seen as a setback for Putin.
There hasn't obviously been any explicit words to that sort of extent by Putin saying, well, this is really a defeat, we're pulling out. What has happened is, you're absolutely right, Annette, the military, the defense secretary who was killed basically over the weekend in this attack on his home, which was completely pulverized, he was known for his Russian connections, directly to the Kremlin, but what happened was to the Russian allies, the paramilitary forces that basically were helping prop up the junta government in Bamako. So it was originally the Wagner Group. We spoke about that lots of years ago. We know that its leader died under mysterious circumstances in a plane crash. It didn't go away, the Wagner Group. It was replaced, or it sort of transmogrified into something called the Africa Corps, which was really also under the Kremlin's umbrella. And the question is now, is the Azawad Group, which I mentioned earlier, that's the separatist Tuareg-led separatist movement, they said they struck an agreement with the Africa Corps, with the Russian-led Africa Corps, to basically withdraw. They'd let them withdraw from Kidal, the northern town I spoke about. So the reports are that those forces from the African Corps, the Russian forces, have withdrawn from the town. Doesn't mean all the forces have left, doesn't mean they've gone back to Russia. But yeah, it smacks of some sort of big setback for a corps that was seen as a big ally of this regional government. It leaves the future of that relationship up for grabs, and we don't really know what's going to happen to the remaining Africa Corps forces, those Russian forces that replaced Wagner. What's going to happen to them in the future as this situation evolves?
China is a major source of defending free trade. And I hope when the dust ends for this war of aggression against Iran, the Iranians and the Arabs will shake hands again, probably with Chinese intervention and mediation, and they may cement their friendship and cooperation for decades and centuries to come, because it will be suicidal for the Arabs who believe in Muslim, many of them believe in Sunni Muslim, and the Iranians who are Muslims, even though they believe in Shia version of Muslim, get at each other's jugular. It will be much better if they can recognize each other, respect each other, shake each other's hand, and engage in cooperation with each other, rather than, as some other countries are leading them in the wrong direction, being hostile with each other, trying to destroy each other, get to each other's jugular. That will not be a better Muslim world at large. That will not be the better Middle East.
Deeply regrets to announce the tragic death of Lieutenant General Sadio Kamarari, Minister of State, Minister of Defense, and Veterans Affairs. Indeed, following the cowardly terrorist attacks that took place on the morning of April 25th, 2026, a car bomb driven by a suicide bomber targeted the minister's residence. He engaged in an exchange of fire with the attackers and succeeded in eliminating some of them. During a violent clash, he was injured and taken to the hospital, where he unfortunately died from his injuries.
The air in Bamako this Monday morning is While at Sawari, the goal was, of course, a total decapitation of the state, but the Africa Corps played a very decisive role in those first.
Violently overthrow the government and demonstrate Russia's inability to protect its strategic partners on the African continent following what happened in Syria has been thwarted.
And that's Syria.
Stay back, stay back, stay back. Wait for this side. Stay for this side. All right. Nobody go this way. Is that understood?
We are evacuating. It's not someone coming in.
To eliminate gangs, which, according to preliminary information, might have been trained by Western law enforcement agencies. The actions of the terrorists pose an immediate threat to the stability of the Russian-friendly Malian state and may have the most negative consequences for the entire surrounding region.
Thank you, Mr. President, for joining us today. And I also want to say how grateful we were last night as a member of the board of the White House Correspondents Association and the incoming president of that association. We were very grateful to have you there, taking part in a tradition that recognizes the role of a free press in our democracy. And we're all sad that it went the way that it did. We're all grateful that we get to come home to our loved ones and be together afterward. And thank you for your leadership in the moments afterward and for coming on and giving the country the strength to not let those who would wish to harm us stop us from our pursuit
well,
of
Jackie,
our
thank
liberties.
you very much. It's very nice. Very nice. And let's do it again. Let's not let people like this change the course of our country. We're not going to let that happen.
I want to thank our partners, specifically Russia, because thanks to them, who are also behind us as partners, we have gained even more confidence. In the area of military equipment, everyone can see that there has been a change, there has been an improvement. We are fighting on all fronts, and we fully support the government that has given its life to uphold sovereignty. On the military front, Malians are proud of the equipment from cooperation with the region. And after cooperation with Russia, today, thank God, our army is trained and equipped with enough qualified personnel.
Stay back, stay back. Wait for this side. That may be coming.
2011, NATO airdropped sophisticated weapons into the Libyan desert. This allowed jihadists and terrorist groups to flourish on the continent. But African youth understood the imperative. Military personnel, forced to leave their barracks, Burkina Faso, and Mali. American and German troops were also present. The entire West had bases in the Sahel, but they haven't been able to contain the rise of terrorism. It's strange. People who, with their equipment, can even see ants moving on the ground, can't see the terrorist movements. But today, there is a new bloc called African youth, who are not ready to endure the same humiliation their parents suffered from the Western imperialists. And these young people, everywhere they raise the Russian flag to show their resistance in their fight against imperialism. There is no better flag to fight against imperialism than the Russian flag.
If they want to talk, they can come to us or they can call us. You know, there is a telephone. We have nice secure lines, although I'm not sure any telephone line is secure, frankly, but we have secure lines, and if they want, we can talk. But we're not sending people to travel 18 hours to meet where you literally think of this. We had a meeting for Tuesday, and it was on Saturday that I was saying, when are we meeting? Tuesday, because it's so far. So, great respect for Pakistan, but I will, because they've been terrific. They've really tried, and they'll stay involved. But we're going to do it by telephone. So if they want, they can call us. But again, they know what has to be in the agreement. Very simple. They cannot have a nuclear weapon. Otherwise, there's no reason to meet.
Take a look at this video. We saw them speaking with.
If they want to talk, they can come to us or they can call us. You know, there is a telephone. We have nice secure lines, although I'm not sure any telephone line is secure, frankly, but we have secure lines, and if they want, we can talk. But we're not sending people to travel 18 hours to meet where you literally think of this. We had a meeting for Tuesday, and it was on Saturday that I was saying, when are we meeting? Tuesday, because it's so far. So great respect for Pakistan, but I will, because they've been terrific. They've really tried, and they'll stay involved. But we're going to do it by telephone. So if they want, they can call us. But again, they know what has to be in the agreement. Very simple. They cannot have a nuclear weapon. Otherwise, there's no reason to meet. And the guy is a sick guy. When you read his manifesto, he hates Christians. That's one thing for sure. He hates Christians, hatred. And I think his sister or his brother actually was complaining about it. You know, they were even complaining to law enforcement. So he was a very troubled guy. The guy is a sick guy. When you read his manifesto, he hates Christians. That's one thing for sure. He hates Christians, hatred. And I think his sister or his brother actually was complaining about it. You know, they were even complaining to law enforcement. So he was a very troubled guy. The guy is a sick guy. It was a very sad evening in many ways, and it was also an evening where a lot of people got together. It was I saw some Democrats as we were leaving, and they were generally hostile, and last night they were waving to me, and politicians, congressmen, senators, they were waving and saying, great going, and hello. So there was something very nice, to tell you. It was, I mentioned it last night in my little discussion. I think it came together. The place was just coming together. It was very nice to see, actually.
With the neighbors who live here on the alleged.
It was a very sad evening in many ways. And it was also an evening where a lot of people got together. It was I saw some Democrats as we were leaving, and they were generally hostile. And last night they were waving to me, and politicians, congressmen, senators, they were waving and saying, great going, and hello. So there was something very nice, to tell you. It was, I mentioned it last night in my little discussion. I think it came together. The place was just coming together. It was very nice to see, actually.
Just open the door. Just open the door. Open the door.
The Secret Service has been unfunded for 71 days. What kind of a country?
So preliminary information, we do believe he was a guest here at the hotel. We have secured a room here in the hotel. And again, we'll go through the appropriate procedures to determine what was inside there. But that is secure. At this point, like I said, we believe he is the only suspect in this case. So preliminary information, we do believe he was a guest here at the hotel. We have secured a room here in the hotel.
It is clear, based upon what we know so far, that this individual was intent on doing as much harm and as much damage as he could.
The response time was really incredible, and we're going to reschedule. We're going to do it again. We're not going to let anybody take over our society. We're not going to cancel things out because we can't do that. We wanted to stay tonight. I will tell you, I fought like hell to stay, but it was protocol. They said, please, sir, because they didn't know there was a lot of action going on, and they didn't know could there be probably a lone shooter, but we'll find out. We'll find out very quickly. They have it very well.
Was injured and transported to a local hospital where the agent is receiving care. The suspect is also transported to a local hospital where he is being evaluated. The president returned safely to the White House, as you know. We are so very thankful to members of law enforcement who did their jobs tonight and made sure that all guests were safe. We have no reason to believe at this time that anyone else was involved.
Despite the shooting,
was injured and transported to a local hospital where the agent is receiving care. The suspect is also transported to a local hospital where he is being evaluated. The president returned safely to the White House, as you know. We are so very thankful to members of law enforcement who did their jobs tonight and made sure that all guests were safe. We have no reason to believe at this time that